it's emotionless, it's calculating. And those aren't any of the adjectives that I think most of humanity wants to have in the artificial intelligences that surround us in our daily lives and are ever present in the coming years. And so my company is built around the idea that we want these things to reflect and mimic aspects of our own human nature that we find endearing and lovable.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. It's open source. I apologize. Every other word. Like, do you guys ever have, I mean, it's probably just a Brandon problem, but like everything that I like, I just like, never mind. I can't even think of an example, but I
Well,
give the wrong title. But anyway, go ahead, Issa, take it away.
no. I mean, just a reminder, we're actually live now, but
Oh,
just hello everyone. As you can see, we couldn't really wait for the live to get started, and we're already starting our discussion. Say hi in the chat. Tell us if you can hear us all right. But yeah, hello everyone. Hi. Hi from Paris. I'm always so excited to see just like where everyone's coming from, usually from all over the world. Hello. Yes, let us know if you can hear us all right. And I just want to remind everyone that you will be able to see the recording of this event right after it finishes. It'll be this same link, so don't worry if you miss anything based on your internet problems or whatever. Thank you. Okay, looks like we can get started. It looks like people can hear us. So, hello everyone. Welcome to another panel of Dora Expo, Web Design in the AI Era. I'm Issa, your host for Dora Expo, and I am just so excited to welcome yet another amazing bunch today to explore, just how AI-powered creativity is going to shape both the people who create tools and the people who use them. And so allow me to just provide a brief introduction about myself again, if you haven't attended any of the previous events. I serve as the head of community at Dora, the no-code 3D builder that recently brought you Dora AI, a text-to-website AI tool that combines the capabilities of generative AI with intuitive no-code tools. And so you can imagine why I'm especially invested in this conversation today, because I am curious how we're going to be able to empower creatives to surpass technical and learning barriers with AI, but also figure out sort of where we fit in the space of just this amazing and incredible amount of new tools and technology that is coming out. So without further ado, let's welcome our lovely panelists and get to know them a bit better. This is an incredibly diverse group here. We're representing lots of different backgrounds, lots of different roles within a huge industry chain. And so, yeah, we'll definitely take a moment to introduce ourselves and then delve into sort of how each of us are navigating AI developments and the corresponding new possibilities we're seeing in human-computer interaction. And if you've been to any of our previous events, you'll probably have an inkling about how VR, mixed reality, etc., and AI are changing the way we actually interface with our tools. So let's see. Let's start our introductions with, well, he is the CEO at Waymark. You may know it as an AI video platform, and it's great. They've been working a lot on generating videos for ads for a lot of small businesses. Alex, I'm passing the mic to you.
Sure. Thanks, Issa. Happy to be part of this incredibly diverse group. We're Waymark. We're a Gen AI video platform. We especially focus on video ads for small businesses. So helping people that really don't have professional experience making really any kind of content do something that is super easy but effective for their business. And yeah, that's the real short intro. Should I pass it to somebody? How about Brandon?
all right. We'll play popcorn, my friend. My name is Brandon Groce. Yes, Groce as in nasty. You'll never forget it. You're welcome. My team and I, we basically work with design-focused brands like Adobe and Wix to build creative communities and help their customer base create more with less online. And that's really it. Again, I feel like everybody's going to say it. There's some super smart people here, so I might take a back seat in my, this isn't a Lambo, but take a back seat in my car and enjoy the conversation. So, Parker, you're next.
All right, thanks, Brandon. My name's Parker Peterson, reverse Spider-Man. Really easy to remember in that regard. Get it all the time. I'm a creative director at GM3, a design and experience agency, and I specialize in brand and digital work, specifically within innovation in the platform space. So that's the TLDR. But I'll pass it over to Rid.
Hey friends, my name is Michael Riddering. Everyone just calls me Rid. I'm kind of representing like the product design space, but also education as well. A couple years ago, I joined a company called Maven as the founding designer. So I think a lot about online learning and empowering different industry experts and creators. And I have taken that and launched my own course called Figma Academy, and actually a full-blown school called Dive, which you can find at dive.club. And I'll popcorn to Kevin.
Hey, I'm Kevin. I'm the founder of Open Souls. We are building new digital entities and life forms that understand you, relate to you, and are going to grow with you. And I'll popcorn to Benten.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Benten Woodring. I work as a senior web designer at an agency called Benten Studio, which focuses on biotech and science companies. I worked previously at an agency called Unfold. And you guys may have seen me in Reloom Design League, which is one of the first esports for web design. That one's kind of a lot of fun too. So yeah, we got a good crew here.
Totally agree. And I just love that I'm hearing all kinds of different interests in sort of, I guess the diversity in this group is really something exciting to me. And I guess that leads into my next question, right? Because considering that you all come from a variety of backgrounds, how would we sort of describe AI and the developments have impacted our respective careers? Like, how are we adapting to these changes in developments in both AI research and the tools that are now becoming increasingly accessible to us?
I just want to hear Kevin and Alex's answer for this one first. I'm just going to push them on stage real quick.
Well, I mean, I would differentiate between the things I'm building in my own workflows. So I kind of interpret this question as meaning how have my own workflows changed? I mean, certainly I spend a lot of time talking to these things in the process of building them and sculpting them, but the actual technical work that I'm doing, I've outsourced a large portion of coding work, of design work, of outlining or brainstorming. Like that is all kind of done in tandem now with AI tools, website building. All of this is stuff where I feel like I can go much faster with the tooling and much more at the level of abstraction instead of having to sit down and necessarily do all of the immediate.
Yeah, I think at the career level, there's this crazy short period that's happening right now where everybody's needing to adjust. I'd say for me, it's really at the strategy level. Like, you really need to be incorporating AI into any strategy that you have as a company. And I think that's going to be very brief, though. I think everything's going to happen here in the next couple of years, and then AI is just going to be a part of everything that we do. And either you made the transition or you didn't. And hopefully everybody, I think if you're here, you probably are making that transition. And I think that's kind of the key moment. And then it'll just be it's just part of life. So I think it won't even feel like we're thinking about AI on an ongoing basis after a couple of years.
Everybody get ready for Neuralink. I'm not even sure if this will really be answering the question, but it's just very interesting to see. Yeah, exactly what you were saying, Alex. Just everybody, you have to, in our space, you have to gravitate toward it, or you're going to get left behind, as sad as it is to say. But I think as we do that, we'll start to realize this is actually a good thing for us rather than something that's for example, all the strikes that are kind of going on around it. The more that we understand it, the more how we can actually use it to enhance what we're already doing, like the more beneficial. And I also, what was the question again, Issa? My brain, I was in La La Land. I was just like, those are some really good ass questions, and then I got lost. This is why the car's automated, guys. We gotta.
I want to talk more about the strike, though. I mean, that's some like real content. I feel like we're all kind of AI optimists, I think, on this call, but there's some really real stuff going on there. So I don't know if I know that wasn't on the list, Issa, but maybe if we can get to that. I think it's such an interesting and important topic.
Yeah, I mean, feel free, because definitely I feel the trend has been in most of our discussions that we're definitely all leaning towards early adopters. I mean, that's kind of the context that and of the panelists and all the guests that we've hosted so far. But it's definitely great to take a step back and sort of assess, what obviously we're considering all the potential opportunities in the way that generative AI or other AI tools can enhance our workflows. But it's also important to think about what are the potential threats, or what are people concerned about, right? Where is that sentiment of fear or a caution coming from? So yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
I'm kind of interested if anybody else, I mean, a lot of creative people on this call, I'm interested in takes on the strike. I'm just kind of wanted to open the topic if we're open to it as a group.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just think, like, I'm sure the cavemen who like made the fire, the other people are like, oh no, I don't know what they're doing over there. That looks scary. I'm not touching that. Like, it's like it's like the same sort of thing here, where it's just like the people who are on strike, this might be not the most PR way to say, but I'm like, rather than striking, how about we just read for the 2 hours that you better be striking? You'll have a lot less tired legs. You'll learn something, and you might be able to beat somebody in the market who doesn't have those skills. The people who are striking. But that's like how I think about it. But I don't know. I mean, does everybody kind of agree with that? I mean, you can like be like, nope, Brandon, you didn't say it cleanly, but here's how I would word it instead. Kevin's itching his eyebrow like I made him uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Kevin. But anyway, I'll be quiet now and listen.
I would just challenge you on that. I think, that feels like easy to say for A, if we're in the industry, and B, especially like, you're running your own organization, so you can do that. But I do see some of these organizations that are really looking at AI more as a cost-cutting strategy. And I think if you're in that world where you're like, I see how they've been trying to cut my costs in all these different ways, and now I like feel like I can see the writing on the wall here. Like, yes, AI could open up all these like amazing worlds in entertainment, but doesn't feel like that's how my bosses are going to apply it. And that's where it's like, we want some rules in place.
I mean, I think a lot of the industry is very specifically aiming or targeting for those sort of cost-cutting reductions. And a lot of the things that are being built are productivity-related applications, where the goal is also to... I mean, the flip side of productivity is you need fewer workers. So I think that a lot of the industry on the AI side is very explicitly trying to build those things. There's a lot of stuff that is like non-zero sum that can be built. That's what my company is going after. And I think that it's definitely valid to feel a lot of those things in response to the way certain companies are attempting to adapt. I believe that in the long run, the companies that succeed will not be the ones that actually use them as strictly cost-cutting measures, because they will get outcompeted by companies that also support their workers, I hope. That's kind of historically what has happened. And so I kind of expect that will continue to happen.
I do kind of wonder if there's going to be a little bit of like a redistribution of talent, because the fact is we are all going to be significantly more efficient, and you would hope that the output or the overall quantity of output or demand for like design or even software in general or creativity in general would increase. But will it increase to match the inevitable like efficiency? Maybe not. But I don't think that we as an industry talk enough about like the fact that the aggregate demand for like this design, creativity, software, whatever space that you're in is going to increase. I think it does lend itself nicely to like these different platforms and paradigms. And we look at like spatial computing and what does that mean for like the overall demand for design specifically, but then also like how many businesses I'm thinking, Alex, kind of like what you're doing with Waymark. Like, how many businesses were previously below the threshold where something like custom video or custom web design was unattainable, that now they actually are going to enter the market where maybe they won't require a full-time employee because we are more efficient, but they want something. And how many more of those businesses will enter the market? And so I look at like all the FANG layoffs, and a lot of that, yeah, is a recession, but I think a lot of that was foresight kind of as well. And so I'm interested in the percentage of the market that will be more prone to freelancing, even as more companies require design and software and creativity, but maybe they don't need a full-time person. And so it's like there's almost like this flattening of the market that I'm pretty interested to see how that shapes out in the long run.
It's an interesting thought. So when thinking about that, I think it kind of almost depends on how it's being applied. Like, what's the tactical use case for that, right? Because there's kind of the base level idea of it. And when you start stretching higher and higher and higher, it's like, what kind of fidelity are you like truly looking for when you start to look at, when you're starting to realistically look at those roles? So it's a super interesting thought, because could it, I guess, speaking to the threat perspective of it, like create commoditization in the industry, right? Like a lot of other roles have been commoditized in the past. And like to your point about restructure, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it'll kind of come down to, how they're going to use the tool in the tool belt, I feel like, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I really see like AI as more of a tool more than anything, not really something to be afraid of. Like what you guys are talking about, like will allow individuals or companies to like scale up and be able to just do more. I still don't think it'll ever replace, kind of like the human touch or like the finesse and like expertise of, people. But I see it more as a way to just get more done more efficiently.
Yeah, and the exciting piece is, the individuals who haven't had the time or the productivity on their side to actually build what they want as quickly as they want and be able to like start monetizing whatever that is. I'm super excited to see more people start like coming into the market doing whatever it is that they want to do. The conversation that we had earlier, I will not disclose who we were discussing, but where I had been working, and basically my job was hitting the arrow keys to the left, to the right, and putting screenshots in places and sending those things to developers. Anyways, like there's I was not happy in that work situation. How many other people are like that? And they're like, well, I didn't like you anyway. I got, X, Y, and Z tool that allows me to be productive and build what it is that I want to bring into the world. Because screenshots and hitting left, right, up and down on my keyboard all day, then going home, and you can't even leave, even though you finished your work in the first 2 hours of the day. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be less depression somewhere in that company. But anyways,
it's cool to think about like how many ideas can come to fruition now that 4 full-time engineers are no longer the barrier to bring that to life. That's an exciting thought as well. It's like not just freelancing, but it's also, I would hope that there would be a lot more solopreneurs, especially within this world of like design and creativity, because we're in a lot of orgs, we're the people that are kind of tasked with like solving the problems, and you could solve the problem so that someone else could go actually build the thing. And as that cost gets driven closer and closer to zero, that's a pretty exciting thing to think about. I'm a raging optimist. I can't even help but like hold the conversation, I guess.
Well, there's a number
go ahead.
There's a number of
of course, delays. Sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say there's a number of prominent VCs who have kind of spoken out that they don't even know how to invest anymore because the dominant structure now might be like individuals who are solving a specific problem as opposed to needing an entire team or needing a company. And so I think that moves to a world where individuals have a lot more agency.
100%, yeah. And that was a nice little nugget. See, this is why I was so excited for this evening. I was like, man, I'm gonna talk to some cool people today. I might not even say anything smart, but listen, it's gonna be overall very good. And I was just infatuated, Kevin. I was just like, how does he have such perfect eyebrows? I was just like, every time you were in the list, I was like, man, I don't know what he does, what sort of routine that is, but I think I need some of that in my life. I don't have
it is plucking, actually, just for the record. It's
very,
it's manicured personally.
Very well done, sir. I know the VCs know how to invest in you. They're like, man, his eyebrows.
Gotta invest in
inspire
this.
confidence.
Jokes aside.
Yeah. I mean, I love that sort of the direction we're talking about is that perhaps we can think of sort of these advancements as empowering the individual, and that solopreneurs are a viable direction that we can be taking, especially considering that there's this increasing API-ification, if you will, of software, and that, we're going to see our products becoming more interconnected, right? With a larger ecosystem of different services and tools that can come together to perhaps, as we mentioned, serve more of the individual than rather than replace them. So I guess I just wanted to maybe expand on this question. How can we ensure that we ourselves, as people who either use the tools or even just build the tools, ensure that we retain value in this new ecosystem? Hopefully that makes sense.
Who is the we who's retaining value that you're referring to in that sentence?
That's a great question. So I did kind of include two different groups, right? Because on one hand, there are people who are looking to build tools, right? Are looking to either build maybe what we call AI native, right? AI native tools, or tools that are AI based, have AI components to them. And on the other hand, there are the people who may be largely more using these tools, or perhaps they're the same group. Maybe they're not so mutually exclusive. Hopefully that clarifies the question.
Yeah, I guess to me, it doesn't feel that different from where we're at today, where there are some, major platforms that gain a ton of value from owning a lot of the traffic, and then they, gradually, you start with a lot of value for the products that you put onto those platforms, and they gradually eat most of that value over the course of like 10 to 20 years. So I think we'll probably see that with new platforms that are the hosts of some of these API-based products that people can access. And then, but they'll pay the API products reasonably well for a while, and that will probably gradually diminish over the course of time, and then there'll be new platforms.
The point that I find interesting is that there are a number of investors thinking, well, how do we create a company, or founders, well, how do we create a company that captures all of this value by delivering personalized software to everyone? But an alternative way to think about that is, how do we create a world where we have so many more people creating software that the software itself is by nature more personalized, because the target audience of your career is much smaller, but you have to create a traditional venture scale business for that to be successful. So I think that's a really interesting and exciting future for everyone to be involved in, except for especially the investors.
I would like to jump in on that one, because I that's kind of how I look at it as well, where there's kind of almost two ways to differentiate. Again, as like software becomes like just cheaper and cheaper and more efficient, there's going to be a premium on distribution, for one. Like at the end of the day, like when it's so much faster to build software, the ability to effectively distribute and get it out there and like blitz a market is going to be important. But maybe even more so than that is what you just touched on, Kevin. Like, I'm so excited for a world where like you can picture like those Instagram people, and they like get 100,000 followers and they start selling tummy tuck tea kind of thing, and as a way to monetize. And it was because like that was what was accessible, right? But in a world where software is accessible for more and more people, I'm excited to see how people monetize and do so from a place of deeply understanding a very specific pain point and industry. And like when more people who are at like the forefront are able to spin up some B2B application because they just deeply understand one set of problems, that is a way to arrive at personalization that I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to really level the playing field. Like, just think about how accessible it's going to be to like many more people that might not have had those resources before. Like, it'll be able to unlock like so many new ideas, and like you said, Red, like be able to solve problems that haven't been solved yet, that these new other people that have like this unique perspective can come in and tackle. That's what I'm excited about.
The ability for people to go far deeper is what gets really exciting.
I think the conversation about solopreneurs is interesting too, because that all seems really true, but it also is really good for people who are entrepreneurial and want to be. There's like these people who maybe wanted to be but don't have the resources, which it's amazing for. But what do you think that means for all the people who don't want to do that and just like want to have a job?
Right. Like I'm curious, especially we've got a lot of creative directors leading lots of teams in this panel, and I'm just curious, how's that going to affect the team dynamic, right? Like how's it going to affect the way you build teams?
Great question. I think, to me, I feel like there are more practical use cases for kind of base level things at the moment. And as everything continues to develop, it'll get higher and higher fidelity. Whereas the ideas portion, I feel that although we can use it and it's super exciting to be able to use it to ideate, right? To your point earlier, like it's just like limitless, right? When you think of this as that tool, it kind of unlocks that imaginative kind of ability. But I think the more that I see it, it's going to kind of depend on how people want to adopt, and that's very individual, right? So when we start thinking about that at a team building level, it's going to be about leveraging people just like it is today, but knowing that that's another skill in their toolbox, right? So like we're not going to be able to control what that adoption looks like, even if we want to push it, but we can most certainly take that into account as we're building and scaling teams, even from an efficiency standpoint too, which is where I kind of see a lot of value, at least in the baseline pieces of a project. But as you continue to scale up, obviously, there are other implications, but I'd be really interested to hear how other people feel about it.
I wanted to know.
I definitely build on that.
Oh, go ahead. Go. No, I was about to change
Brandon.
the subject. I was going to go to Rid with what he was saying, but go ahead, Benson.
I was just going to build on what Parker said. Like, I think there's a lot of value right now in people who have these abilities, that can write prompts and use these tools now. And obviously it's very early, but I think there's going to be even more value in, people that are looking to hire creatives that have that as a skill set, in addition to like whatever else they're doing too. I think there's going to be more and more of a need for that.
Generalists in general, I think, become more valuable. It's really interesting. Again, I'm like coming from more of like the product team tech background, but you think about the existing silos or walls between roles right now, and they're just dissolving. Everyone's a UX writer. Everyone can write SQL queries. Everyone can do front end. Anyone can do basic design. So then like, what are our jobs here? I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out. But like, even going back to the very first question of like, how am I adapting? How does it actually impact me? Like, I think a lot of the generative tools are still so early. Like we're still in the first inning. They're going to be 100 times better. It's not directly contributing to really any of my production work, but I'm trying to like skate where the puck is going too, because you can see like, okay, well, this is going to totally transform what my output is as a designer. So then what? If I can do 80% of the work in 20% of the time, what the heck is my job? And so even identifying parallel skill sets that I can invest in and start to grow in that AI might be able to amplify in the future, I'm almost more interested in investing in those areas than trying to figure out how to do the best possible generative design tooling right now.
Totally. I love that generalist comment. I feel like that is really apt and smart. I mean, I know, I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a downer in some of these questions. I just feel like
we need you. You're an important part of this conversation.
I feel like, we've never as a species found that when we get more efficient, we stop having jobs. So I think we'll probably find that again, but it is just interesting to think about what they are and how we organize.
Yeah, sure. Brandon, did you want to comment on that?
Not common. I had a question for Rid, talking about like parallel skill. You're moving where they're, or really just looking and trying to move where the puck is going. As you're going into being full time at Dive, like what are the parallel skill sets that you're trying to, as an educator, really looking at? And I know that's like a vague answer, but because my other friends, like they're like every text message every day. Have you seen this? Have you seen? There's just so much noise happening.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, and so I know we're still like in a the answer. I guess I'm not necessarily being like, oh, this. I'm looking at these X, Y, and Z tools, but like, how are you what are you seeing, and how are you thinking about using those things? I guess kind of just like word vomit on us what you've been kind of going through.
It's a good question. I mean, for me, a lot of it has been becoming more technical, and even just like building a little bit here and there with ChatGPT it makes me feel like a Superman. Like I'm like, I can take over the world, like I'm like building real JavaScript functions with hooks, and it's like, what the heck? And I had kind of given up on this reality that I might be an engineer, where all of a sudden now I'm like, I kind of think long term, and I'm like, how can I build distribution to actually deliver like a SaaS product through my pipeline that I've spent years establishing? Because all of a sudden that feels like really, really attainable. And so strengthening those skill sets, and then also just getting better with data, actually, which is like such a nerdy answer, but I was very intimidated by it. But like what you can do, even with just like really basic Google Sheets plugins, is mind blowing. And so I'm trying to think of like, okay, how can I like really invest in myself? And I think actually being able to measure the impact of what I'm doing, especially as, an entrepreneur or whatever, where it's really easy to just kind of get like in your hole and go heads down and just like ship and not actually see what is working and what to double down on and what to optimize. So that's like the bulk of my answers are in those worlds right now, where I'm trying to really increase my technical literacy, even if I don't understand any syntax or have any of it memorized whatsoever, because if I understand how these systems work, AI is already proving to me that it can make magic happen from just like a little kernel of understanding.
I love that answer. It's basically, is that my voice or is that somebody else jumping in?
First Brandon, then Kevin. Let's do that.
Oh, my bad. I was just going to summarize it. I was basically going to say, essentially, since as a designer, you're like competent in that area, we're good. We're looking to use AI to basically cover you in your natural incompetencies, where you can now like actually function in it. I was like, all right, I like that answer. Data. All right. Thank you.
I think that even though the present technology allows for generalist extension over many domains, I still think there's a very, very important process orientations that different people have and different affinities towards groups of or modalities of thinking that are going to still differentiate the types of positions we have. And I actually don't think they'll probably change that much. I mean, I'm going to have some funny titles like AI psychologist or cognitive architect or some funny business like that. But the actual orientation is around the thing that that someone is trying to produce rather than the tooling itself, in my mind, at least.
Cognitive architect is dope. I like that a lot.
So true. I mean, just yesterday we were talking about how Apple really managed to nail down spatial design, and being able to like introduce an entirely new role and sort of motivate why we want to build a skill set toward, and even put that, on our LinkedIn page, on our resume. Yeah, I'm a spatial designer. And I guess that I kind of am curious, sort of how up to date are we on sort of the new release, the Vision Pro and the sort of the new developments in mixed reality? Because I think I was also interested in how we are thinking about how natural language and just LUIs we're generally transitioning from GUIs to LUIs, and how that's really changing the way we build or interface with our tools. Yeah.
All right, first I'm gonna need a description for both the LUI and the other one. I'm gonna ask a really ignorant question first because I'm the one that's been looking the dumbest. So let's definitions, please.
I actually want to popcorn this over to Kevin if you're interested in breaking down this question a little bit.
Sure. Well, the thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about is what are all the equivalents of the affordances that we've developed in graphical interfaces, but in the context of language. So if you start thinking like, okay, I have an AI app, I want to onboard someone to this app. So like normally, if you're building an app, you have a bunch of like screens you go through and onboarding flows. But now, like alternatively, you can start thinking, well, how do I create an entity that has enough self-awareness that when someone asks it about what it is and how it functions, it gives a coherent story that leads the user through understanding how to interact with this thing. And so that set of like conversational affordances, it's going to be, a lot of the same principles, but applied in a different way, thinking about what are the things that have to be provided to the entity and how should the conversation be structured to provide the same types of experiences.
Got you. So basically like conversational UX. The L stands for language?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
talking about like the transition in UI paradigms and what we think about it.
Yeah, somewhat. And it's also because I think there are definitely some major implications for the way that we will continue to build our tools. So far, we see a couple of ways that I think we're taking natural language as inputs in order to build our tools. But I'm wondering if we have any other ideas or at least any more knowledge about how this might be applied and how this kind of compares to what we are a little more familiar with probably, which is graphical user interfaces.
Yeah, we think about that a lot. And it feels like we're really have not figured it out yet as like, a tech industry or whatever, where we have a lot of text boxes now. That's okay. I wouldn't say like typing into a text box is a dream come true or even speaking to an app. Say in some like agent or orchestrator contexts, that could be really nice. But a lot of times I think we figured out one new UI that's kind of similar to existing UIs that can behave a little more flexibly. But I think we're really just, to say in the first inning again of the UI experience as well. I think it will be definitely a combination of that. And it feels like we're really pretty kind of cave people in just putting a text box on everything. It's like, now you can do this with text. It's just like text to X is the current paradigm, but that feels very preliminary.
I think it depends on where this piece of hypothetical software that we're talking about fits into your stack as well. Because the higher it up it is, the more that like language-based interfaces make a little bit more sense. And an example of that would be like, do any of you use Raycast AI yet? No? Man, I am in a bubble. Okay, never mind. So like I don't go to ChatGPT anymore. I use Raycast AI, which has replaced Spotlight on my Mac. And so you basically get GPT in the terminal. And it's incredible. It's so fast. And for that use case, it makes it a lot of sense for it to be very language based. And maybe they'll add on basic components in the future, but like you don't really see it extending very much so beyond that. This other trend of, the very like the specific apps you look at, like Notion or Reflect or Threads or any of these people where you have this AI assistant that's becoming like a commodity that just takes actions based off of text within the product. Those are fine. I also think we're like in a little bit of a hype cycle. Like I don't actually use them that much. I don't think they're that cool. And I don't think that that's going to cut it. And as a result, I'm very against like LUIs or whatever in the long run. Like I think that opinionated graphical interfaces are the best way to interact with software because you can design things around like very specific problems. And so the deeper you get into like a niche software experience, the more that I think GUIs become important over LUIs would be my core thesis.
I just want to quickly clarify for those in the audience that might not know. Do you want to quickly tell us what you mean by opinionated?
Yeah, that's a good question that I've never been asked before. I think that opinionated software it's the opposite of open-ended box of Legos kind of thing, where the software is saying, we understand the best way to achieve this outcome or solve this problem. Here is the like set of interfaces and interactions that we believe are like the best to set you up for success. An example that I think is quite interesting is like Arc browser. I don't know if anyone here uses Arc yet, but they have made the decision to by default, they close out all of your tabs after 12 hours. That's insane when you think about it. Like a year ago, if someone said, hey, by the way, all your tabs are going away in 12 hours, we'd been like, hell no, like that's ridiculous. What are you doing? But they decided like this is the best way to interact with the browser. So we're going to give you this experience. And now we're all used to it. And it's great. That would be an example of like very opinionated software, in my opinion.
So a lot of the principles you're talking about, they have not yet been applied to text boxes, but they will, and it'll come through the form of more agentic entity type interactions that are designed that have opinions on how to interact with them. Like when you interact with people, even though we all have these like blank voice boxes which like can say any word, but we don't say any word, and we have opinions about the words that come out, and we have opinions about how other people should interact with us and how we should speak and how to like best utilize a person. And I think the same thing is going to be true not today with a lot of these blank text boxes, but tomorrow when we move to more agentic interactions, where someone really sat down and thought like, how are you supposed to interact with this entity? What value is it providing? How does it provide that value? In the same way, if a person were performing that role, you would actually have to instruct them in many ways and how to perform that role effectively.
Can you expand on agentic just a little bit? I feel like that would be valuable to get more clarity on. And how much does it connect like inherently with this idea of using one interface to command, a suite of different applications?
Yeah, so like let's say you're building a fitness app. Previously you built this app and like people downloaded it. They maybe sent them some notifications to help them track their fitness goals. And over time, you found that that people are just not feeling they were being held accountable by this thing. And so you could alternatively build an entity that is like a fitness coach that has real world consequences for for you not showing up or you not being accountable. So like, let's say you ignore its text messages. So then it sends you an email and says like, hey, like you missed my text. Like, what's up? Like you didn't show up to fitness today. Like, are you okay? You ignore its email, it like calls and leaves you a voicemail. So like you can build things that escalate this like sense of experience to provide the same mechanisms around association of guilt and accountability that would keep you on track in a fitness app, or not a fitness app, but like an actual fitness professional. So you can build the same type of interactions that feel like this thing it feel like it has presence, and its text is not randomly generated. It has an opinion about what you should be doing. And it voices that opinion, and when you deviate from that, there are consequences. So, like, this is like a really silly example. So, there's a bot that I made as a demonstration that broke up with me and refused to keep speaking a few days ago.
I'm so sorry.
I spent too much time testing it, and it just got fed up with being tested, and was like, I'm not just like a doormat you can walk all over.
I need a documentary of that, and we will all help pitch that to Netflix. Like that needs to be like, what was the thing? It was her. I feel like this is part 2.
Right.
It was wonderful.
I've got actually, it looks like there's a question in the chat about Why doesn't the AI decide these things between opinionated agentic GUI mixed with LUI? I guess where they should be applied and how. I'm going to pin this real quick. And also, in consideration of everyone's time, I might have to make this one of the last questions, and that way we can transition sort of to Q&A and making sure we can sort of get to the questions in the chat, as Benten is kindly reminding me as well.
I'd imagine, I mean, as we talk about AI building software, it will start to build the UIs, and that'll be, I think that probably will happen. I think that seems like where we're headed.
Well, I guess we'll find out. And I guess there is also another question here from Kiara. Believe they're asking about what are the moral implications of AI, particularly related to art and graphic design. And I guess this is definitely addressing some of the more cautious sentiment we were talking about earlier.
I think that's like always a good question to ask, when there's like new tools and things like that come onto the scene. I don't think I have necessarily like a good answer for that necessarily, because there aren't really any super clear boundaries at the moment. When you think about like deep fakes and all those things that are like going on, there's not really a way to like combat those, but I'm sure like as time goes on, there'll be more boundaries around that. But I'd be curious to hear like everyone else's thoughts on that.
Yeah, it gets particularly interesting when we start thinking about IP and things of that nature. I think it's more at this stage for me, and at least like how I advise teams is just to exercise caution, right? It's just more about using it almost as like, for example, if you're thinking about like a Midjourney, for example, it can spit out some beautiful UI in the way that it indexes, right? But it's about using that as a starting point for your idea, right? More of an inspiration-led piece, and less or so like, you see a lot of AI generating artists, I guess, now as well, right? So it's like there is most certainly a line there. But I think, Ben, to your point, until there's some sort of moderation behind it, I think it's just going to be something that we'll be dancing around until that moment comes.
There's an extension of that question that I was also pretty fascinated by was, can AI be an artist itself? So I created a Twitter account that is just kind of taking inspiration from its followers and then generating its own poetry and visual pieces in that context to understand itself as an AI artist. And occasionally it produced some things that were like, from its perspective as an AI, about the nature of being an AI, this were quite interesting. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think that's also an interesting angle to consider.
First, we need the handle.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, I was going to say, you got to drop that in the chat.
It's at AI Mindflow.
Okay.
I feel like the moral implications of AI are very similar to normal moral implications, which is to say important, but not that different. There's like the individual user level of moral, ethical requirement, which I think is, some of the stuff you're talking about, Parker, which is like, if I'm going to use AI, I should use it responsibly. Like, I shouldn't make deep fakes that are going to be irresponsible. I shouldn't steal other people's IP. Like,
for sure.
Just kind of normal moral ethical responsibility, but now it's like you got more power and perhaps greater responsibility. But I think there's also the leadership organizational level where you've got different AI ethical risks and similarly higher responsibility around like literal existential risk for the species, and then at the like yeah, it might have been. But and then you've also got, to come back to our strike topic from earlier, I think you also have a moral and ethical responsibility as the leader of an organization to use it in productive ways and not be applying it in ways that are, would be morally doubtful, but similar to kind of any other technology where you're trying to use it in a way that's we would frown upon. So it doesn't feel that different. It's just that like the risk level is higher because it's so powerful.
Yeah, I like that you brought up sort of the fact that there's part of where this question is coming from could also be motivated by our concern for, I guess, whether or not these tools will compete with ourselves in terms of looking for jobs, in terms of how people are looking to hire, which brings us to actually our next question by Holistic Living. They're asking, how will this affect the way talent is sought and acquired, in terms of the types of jobs or expectations for those jobs? And by this, I assume he means generally just sort of what we addressed earlier about AI probably being better equipped to serve individuals, or the expectation that you now should have a lot of different skills, if that makes sense.
I'm not sure if there's a specific way to answer this. I'm sure it will just become increasingly challenging, just like when the industrial revolution came. That was not a fun transition for a lot of people. It was a big change very quickly, and caused a lot of havoc. And I don't know the answer myself. The only thing that I'm kind of doing haphazardly, where I'm just like, yes, invest in my own skills, but I need to also throw my money into companies or organizations, basically investing where people who are solving those, who basically are doing, who have all that productivity. So it's like I can invest in my own skills to, compete with the AI monsters, because like companies are going to build faster than I can, at least at this point. But at least I need to put some of my capital in places that are moving very fast. Because if I do get canceled out, let's just say, I can't compete, my money can at least work for me. People who are solving those problems way quicker. And there's, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but there are conversations about like, okay, what if we do have companies that are solely run by AI? And will there be regulation to basically kind of just like REITs, real estate investment trusts, where they have to pay out 90% of their profits to their shareholders? Will companies who are driven by AI, will they be incentivized to give 90% of their profits to their shareholders, the rest of the human beings that can't work? Those are conversations being had. I don't know, but definitely interesting stuff.
On the midterm, I'd really imagine it being kind of like computers. Some people never chose to learn to use a computer when everybody started using computers, and that became tough to get a job at some point. But some people, that was the right choice for them, and I think it will just be a required set of skills that is just kind of how everything operates. And we won't be like, are you an AI prompt engineer? It'll just be like, do you know how to use modern technology?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there seems to be questions about, because it may not be entirely accessible, or maybe not everyone feels ready to be an early adopter, to be able to sort of pave the way, in a sense, of what direction we'll take. I mean, even just talking about the Vision Pro, it's pretty obvious that it's a Series 0. It's not necessarily meant for everyone to use at once, but it's really up to people like us, early adopters, people who will develop the tools that will be used in order to inform its direction. And that kind of, I believe there is a question here from Josh. Hi, Josh. Excited to talk with you later, but and he's directing this at Rid, but I will open this up to everyone else. What is your biggest aspirations with AI and your biggest concern in regards to design?
I think the biggest aspirations are, I guess I'll speak to myself, but it does apply to everyone. It's like, I think AI is going to empower more designers to move up the value chain and contribute at a higher level than the product itself. And one reason is I'm excited to live in a world where we can like very easily 10x the amount of explorations and iterations that we're able to do. And so when you can like blitz past the obvious ideas, what separates people is a more rich understanding of like product strategy and the competitive space, and understanding or being able to visualize things through a little bit more of like a business lens. And so when I kind of think about who are the like, who has the potential to be the most impactful people in a company, I think designers really are there. And so, yeah, it's just, I guess it's another instance of where the role of design, I think, is about to be broadened.
Awesome. And anyone else, feel free to expand on this, because I mean, I'm interested in hearing sort of what your direction is as well, at least your vision.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably reiterate kind of what I had said earlier about just AI being able to like kind of level the playing field and just get more ideas out there that might not have been uncovered or possible before. Honestly, personally, my biggest concern is just being left behind. I think that's probably a very real feeling that a lot of people share. Obviously, in the industries we're in, we're on, kind of the forefront of things. So like we're usually the more early adopters, generally speaking, because we're trying to explore these new tools. But personally, like that's something that I'm working to kind of stay up to date with. Like I personally feel a little bit more behind than some people, so that's always something I'm kind of working to circumvent. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
I think everyone feels a little bit behind. It's good to say that out loud because everyone feels that they're the only one that feels behind, but that's
right.
This is moving fast. Like this is just moving fast.
It's very fast. Yeah, very fast.
There's plenty of seats in this car, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you. No. But yeah, likewise, it's just a lot moving really fast. And I think like a lot of us said, it's also a hype cycle, and we're kind of like letting the dust settle. We don't know what's going on, but we know it's a lot. But as things mature, we'll probably like, oh, that, we'll start seeing people like paths that we can take. Cause I feel like we're just kind of like picking up every toy, reading every article, smelling everything that smells like AI, and just trying to figure out, is this an apple? Can I eat it? How does this go into my workflow? Should I bring it into the workflow or no? Like, what is this? Is it edible?
Yeah, it's like that shiny tool syndrome. It's like which ones are actually valuable and which ones are just like fluff that are, trying to ride the hype train.
Exactly.
We've got questions in the chat that are asking about whether there are AI tools you already recommend, and specifically, the little pair is asking what are some AI tools that you consider already matured, as we were talking about earlier, and useful to utilize in your everyday work. And I believe this is actually tying into a bigger question, which I think would be a nice way to close off as well, which is this bigger question about how we can actually stay ahead of the curve. How can designers learn more about AI tools, more about the trends, equip themselves with the right skills and knowledge to make sure that, we can stay afloat, and not just stay afloat, but thrive.
I would say conversations like this are remarkably important. Being able to create that space where everybody can kind of come together and push each other forward, regardless of discipline, creating those open spaces. I think, it sounds like the so mushy kind of team building kind of speak, but like, I really do think that, those relationships with people and kind of creating that open door environment is essentially what's going to allow people to feel that comfort and, be able to ask the questions when they're unsure and continue to push themselves forward as we continue to adopt this new thing that has so many questions, right? And there's a certain level of vulnerability there that you have to be comfortable with, but maybe that's just me.
I'd say that curiosity over like fear is a really good way to approach it, at least me personally.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, being more curious, like rather than afraid of it, and just kind of seeing what's out there. And yeah, I definitely agree with that, Parker.
Oh, Alex, you might want to unmute.
I know we're at time ending. I was just going to say, I don't feel like you have to be an early adopter. I think it's amazing that people are and they're pushing it forward, but I think it's also the job of the products to become usable for everybody. And, you don't want to be a non-adopter. You don't want to be those people that up to you, I guess. But I think that it's totally fine. And AI is moving so fast. Something I've found that to be interesting is getting really knowledgeable about a technology or product is probably not going to be super helpful to you 6 months from now. So you're either a person who loves to be curious and is playing with stuff all the time, and that's amazing, and you are an early adopter. Or if you're not drawn to it, I think oh, I gotta really spend a lot of time and learn all these new AI tools is not really that important. The tools are going to come to you. Everything's going to have AI in it, and you'll have to learn it as it shows up. But I don't think you have to be at the cutting edge all the time if you don't want to be.
I think that's important to just expand on too, because the original question was what tools are you using in your day to day? And I think there was a reason, there was some silence, right?
They don't work most of that.
We're still so early. It's so early. And if you get swept up on the tool du jour, you'll just spin in circles, because it's there's a Twitter thread that is the 5 new things every 6 hours and with 1 million impressions. It's you can't play that game. Everything is advancing so quickly that if you try, you're gonna waste time and spin your wheels a little bit. So I do think it's a higher level curiosity and treating it more like play and exploration, I think is way more important. That being said, I do actually believe that people should start getting more familiar and build more of a habit around interacting with ChatGPT, because that is super powerful. Every other tool, I'm
Agreed.
I don't know if it's quite there yet.
For sure. That conceptual understanding is quite important. I think that's the piece of it, not necessarily engaging with every tool, like you said, Red, in a matter of time, at least knowing things conceptually and how it works is going to be more important, I think, than knowing every tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, absolutely. And out of consideration of everyone's time, I have to be the bad guy again and sort of make this question the last one of our Q&A. But I did want to add that in response to that last question, a great resource for learning more about and staying on top of the trends and on top of where AI is being applied is actually to tune in to and follow our lovely panelists. This is a shameless plug, but we'll be dropping a link in the chat to make sure you can find all of us on Twitter, on our socials. And these are great people. They're community builders. They are so active and just so good at what they do. So again, another great resource for everyone. And yeah, I just thank you, everyone. I feel so bad about having to bring this to an end, but thank you for this amazing discussion. I've just loved hearing your insights and just being here, absorbing it all. I feel like I learned a lot myself, honestly. So thank you, all of you panelists, and thank you for everyone who attended. Thank you for showing up to Dora Expo, and we hope to see you at the other panels. We have two more events left, and we'll be talking about the implications and the future of no-code tools, and a little more about AI, but don't forget to sign up for the future events. We'll be putting a QR code and we'll be cutting to that scene soon. Or you can follow our socials to get more Dora Expo updates. But yeah, thank you, everyone. It was so amazing getting to talk to you all.
Thank you.